if you want to spend a lot on YouTube and like drive sales with it, which it does, you can't be like, yeah, we need a 3 ROAS, because they will never happen.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Paid Search NYC podcast. Today, very excited to be chatting to Victor Tomas, who's the founder of an agency in Stockholm, Sweden. The agency Ciaso helps D2C and e-commerce brands with Google Ads and YouTube ads. So it's going to be a very e-commerce heavy episode. We're going to be chatting a lot about probably Performance Max. Very excited to do that. Victor, welcome and thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much, Matt. What an introduction. Let's go. I'm ready. It's going to be fun. I love talking e-com and Google. It's my 2 favorite subjects. So yeah, let's get into it.
Fantastic. Yeah. I guess maybe let's just start off with a little bit around how you became the founder at Ciaso. Like, what was the journey up until that? How did that come to?
Yeah. Obviously, I'm going to be a new face to the majority of people watching this. So yeah, sounds good. But so my name is Victor, as you said. I'm 27. And I've been running the agency for about 4.5/5 years now. And at the beginning, I launched it when I was studying in university, actually. So back then, I was doing, a bit of everything. I was this glorified freelancer, as I like to call it. And I did a bunch of pretty much all types of services. So I did a little bit of Google, but I also did primarily Meta, I would say, because that's just the lane that I went in at the beginning. After 1 or 2 years in, I started going more and more, or I started touching Google more and more. And from there, it's been all up ride on going all in on Google. And now for around the past 2 years, 2.5, I've just gone all in on Google Ads and specialized or dedicated myself to becoming a 100% specialist on Google. And now with an agency on 4 to 5 people, solely working with Google Ads. And 99% e-commerce /D2C. But that's the way.
Awesome. That sounds great. It's super interesting to talk to people who kind of specialize in one area. I mean, e-commerce is so huge. So if you're specializing, there's still a lot that goes into that. I guess, talk us through what does a typical way of approaching an e-commerce brand when you first engage with them, at a very level, what do you start with?
Yeah. Obviously, always it's about understanding the business. An e-commerce brand, of any type, just doesn't have the same, numbers, KPIs, same nature of it. You need to understand the business at its core, I would say, to be able to fully set up a strategy around either type, any type of advertising, making creatives for Meta or setting a strategy for Google or anything really. You need to understand the business. So it's always about understanding the business model, the customers, why, what's the business unique selling points, why are people buying from them, and then taking it from there really. So yeah, it's mostly that, trying to understand the business, asking the founder or whoever you're talking to, get as much insight as you possibly can, and then from there starting going deeper into the actual numbers of what's those unique selling points and taking it from there.
Yeah, got it. And are you engaging with clients who normally have an established account, so you're taking over from somebody else, or do you have as well?
Yeah, I would say 90% is established accounts. You go in, you probably do an audit, how are things looking, and then take from there really. So maybe 10% is completely new businesses. People that just launched a brand. We actually took over or started working with a guy that launched his a supplement brand 60 days ago, and he's already doing $200K a month, and it's just killer business. And then obviously we can go in and we can set up Google and scale it really fast for him. But otherwise, if it's a completely new account, staying with Meta, I would say you need it's not the best idea always to bring in an agency. So that's a natural reason. That's a natural reason for why most of the, clients we have are established businesses, established accounts. You go in, you make an audit, and you find all types of things that you have an idea of.
So let's go a bit deeper on that then. What are the common things you find, I guess, that are on the bad habits?
but so like, actually that goes a bit back to like when I started doing Google, I just had, an idea of how things should be set up. Like technically I wasn't there in the beginning, obviously. But I just had an idea of like how things should be done. As you go in and as you start working more and more, you get more contacts. Like I had like, clients I already worked with. And then you get into their Google accounts. You start seeing like, why is it set up like this? Why are you doing it this way? And then the client also tells you in meetings like, yeah, we have a hard time spending more money or spending the majority of our money on like our bestsellers. Like our bestsellers aren't getting enough spent or yeah, all of these products have like only one size left. And all of these different types of problems that, clients bring up as you work with them or during like, pre-onboarding, just, when you're trying to sign up. And that also like forms my image of like how things should be set up. And that was really like one of the formations of how I've laid up the strategy for how we approach things. And that's one of the core reasons that we like before when we talk to brands, we try to understand what's your most unique selling points. What are the things that are driving customers to your brand? When you also go into the Google accounts, you can then sort of see if the strategy is set up around that. Like what are the most important variables, which I always talk about. What are the most important variables to your brand? And those variables go into some of the things which we're going to talk about today, I think, which are like margins. You have different margins on your products, categories. How many different categories do you have? How different are the categories from each other? They have different return rates. They have different sales volume. And then the two last are like in-account things, which everyone has, unless you have like two products. And it's like ROI on the different products in account, but also, volume of the products in account, but also in total. And around that, looking at that, you can always find bottlenecks when it comes to like brand first underspending drastically on their best sellers. They have all of their different products with totally different margins, all under the same target ROAS, which just like gives them an uneven, distribution of profit between the products. And all of these different variables you want to take into account, identify what's the most important, and then lay up the strategy sort of around it, I would say. And as you asked, like, what's the thing that you then find? Yeah, it's pretty much that the brands are not doing this at all. They don't have it thought of, like, they're not thinking about it. And when I started doing doing more Google, that was one of the things that made me go hard on Google and wanting to, because I was naturally good at it, but I also found that it's like all agencies are just stuck in old ways of doing things, and they're not thinking about like the businesses, at their own core, sort of.
Yeah. Just to kind of repeat that back in a different way to make sure I understand that. Is it kind of the structure of the account or the approach in the account is more tailored to maybe the Google best practice, or like more of a platform approach versus like taking a step back and think about, well, what's the business approach that makes sense?
Yeah, missing exactly what's the actual approach when it comes to, so we have a somewhat of a strategy / rule principle that we apply and that we like to think of, and it basically says like your products should be segmented into different campaigns and ad groups based on the variables which are most important to your brand, so that your spend gets most efficient distribution. And into that comes the things which is like, you need to understand your business. And most brands just have a like very streamlined, like very easy setup where just all products are grouped together and they're not split anything. And then it goes together with like, of course you want to let the AI do its job, but the AI doesn't know your business and the AI doesn't know your context, sort of. And then you are not fully utilizing your potential as a brand on Google.
Yeah. What are you mentioned quite a few there, but what are the common variables that kind of dictate the structure? Is it usually margin, or are those that you see quite a lot?
Yeah, the things that we really like to think about are different categories, and as I said, depending on how big difference there are between the categories. So let's say you're a like huge reseller of like outdoor equipment, camping stuff. You selling access and like tools and camping equipment. Those categories are like quite different. And then it goes into the different KPIs of the products within. Like, should all of them have the same target ROAS? Of course, but then also just the audience targeting of those products. We have found that when you start grouping products together, which have the same sort of audience targeting, it actually like they work together better in the campaign. And that goes in together with like seasonality. Like now it's spring, summer is coming up, people are going out camping much more. Camping, equipment, pants, sleeping bags, those products are rising up in search pressure, and you want to scale up those specific products. This is just one example. If you then have everything grouped together and you want to scale up specifically camping, you can't naturally like make sure that you only scale up camping if you have everything grouped together, or you haven't based it around, for example, then what would be a store like that's most important variable would be the categories, like, and how different those categories are. On the other side, if you're a D2C brand and you said like leggings and sport tops, those categories doesn't naturally differ as much, so you don't necessarily need to take it into account in your setup. So that's just one example when it comes to categories. So, but yeah, categories is definitely one of the most important ones. Then it also like margins, if you have different margins, which again, like big resellers usually have that. Sometimes they have products which like with like 50% margins, and then they have others with 20. Optimizing both those groups for the same target ROAS, like it makes no sense. It makes no sense. And brands are doing it. And then you just go in and you say like, why are you doing this? And they're like, yeah, I don't know. And it makes, and they have no thought around it. And honestly, the brands shouldn't need to have a thought, like think about it. The agency should bring it up. Yeah, a lot of times at least, if they have an agency. And then also how many of these variables are important, also sort of dictate whether or not the PMax or like multiple PMaxes or standard shopping make the most sense. For example, I brought the example up of like this outdoor store because we work with a store like that, and they have another category which is like frozen food, and the frozen food category have like margin differing from literally 80% to like 30. Having all of them under the same target ROAS doesn't make sense. And then you want to still sort of have the products together in the same campaign, because the category is like naturally something you want to group together. But within the category, you have different margins. And that sort of guides you then into that, you should probably do standard shopping so you can segment the different margins. The campaign can be the category, but then the ad groups can be the margin groups. But if you did a PMax, you couldn't naturally do that. So depending on these different categories, which variables like make sense for you, depends. Then it sort of guides you also if you, what type of campaign you should use and how you should split it up. But then other variables we use are like the actual ROI on the products. And this is something that every brand that are running Google Shopping has. Like all your different products, 100% has different ROI in the account. And when you split it up, you can look at, conversion rate, you look at cost, you look at impressions, you look at actual ROAS and sales. Like you instantly see that you have some products which are Google, like we audited a brand like 1 or 2 months ago, which spent like literally 400 or 500K. And they had like 50% of their maybe 500 products, which Google were spending, I don't know, less than $100 on. Like so many products which like get no exposure, no impression. And it's just like so much unused potential for a brand like that, because those products have their own angles, which could, or 100% would drive some sales. Maybe they wouldn't be their best sellers, but you would definitely get more money out of, you could definitely get more money or more sales out of those products if you made sure to then like look at those things. So in account variable sort of every brand has ROI, spend on the product level, but then also, ROI, like the performance and the spend on the product level in the account. So those things we all also always look at.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. I think the Liam's point and the categorization is really interesting because it's one thing we don't really have a lot of insight into. Like how does how does Google see, or how much does Google struggle from like a bidding accuracy point of view when you've got things that are so far away in terms of the categories?
Yeah.
Google doesn't necessarily know it's an Axe product versus a frozen food product. It just sees a conversion. So
Yeah.
in that sense, there are a lot of benefits to like helping Google understand, okay, this is this pool of products and this is a particular audience. And then through that, Google should get a better idea of what that person who converts in that category looks like. But you need to segment it. So that makes a lot of sense. It's a shame that have like a product in the platform which is like some sort of accuracy measure of like, oh, we're struggling to like nail this audience versus like, oh yeah, we've totally nailed this.
Yeah, probably like all these type of things that you can come up with, which is like, it's a shame they don't have this. Like, probably it's coming, everything is coming, but at the moment there's just so many like aspects of it which is better done when you sort of like, you still do it manually a bit.
Yep.
But then also like, there's some brands which have like maybe 50 products. You can't split it up in 8 campaigns, because then you would have a bunch of campaigns with 2 products, and that also does not work at all. Like, I honestly have never tried a campaign with 2 products, but like the less products you do, the less options the algorithm has to distribute the spend or the budget that you set to that campaign. So there's also like a fine line where like, are you overdoing it? But then again, I rarely or / never have gone into account and been like, you guys are overdoing it. Like, mostly it's like, yeah, you're not doing it at all. You've tried it. Like, I'm auditing an account right now, which is like, they're doing it just like manually on IDs. And that's just like so unsustainable. Go in, listing groups, then select like 30 items into one. Like, that doesn't work in the long run. You need to have it set up in a dynamic way when it comes to the like in-account performance. If we should dive deeper into that, let me know. But
let's do it. Let's go there.
I just, when I caught myself saying something which I thought like maybe people don't know what it is, but like essentially you don't go in manually and look at your products and like, I don't know, download them from Google Ads or Merchant Center and look at them and be like, yeah, this is the best group. You install scripts which analyzes and reads your account. And based on different variables, it sort of can label your products for you. There's, a lot of different options out there. We're not the creators of those scripts, but like, you can just get a free script that does this for you. And then sort of group your product into these different buckets. The most important thing that I like to bring up is that like, it's not just installing the script. Like, my mom could do that. It's super, it's easy. You just install a script. The most important thing is like, okay, how do we set the different rules of it? How do we actually utilize it in the campaigns? Again, maybe you don't have enough products. You should use all of the different buckets that you do get in the template. Just sort of how do you work the script once you actually get it?
Yeah. Begin to just double click a little bit on so once you understand the variables, some of the changes off the back of that are going to be relatively straightforward. Like, if it's margin or profitability, then it's going to be easy to draw those lines. But if it's category or audience, how do you approach that? Do you rely on that kind of feed data, and if they've categorized it that way, or do you have like external sources? Like, how do you think about that?
Yeah, I would say there's like, it's a mix of the more like fixed rules of the feed, like the internal organization of the products, like the navigation. But then also like, not necessarily, because maybe 2 of the different categories in the internal navigation are practically the same. Like, they have the same seasonality, they have the same audience targeting. So there's one aspect to it, which is that. And another, like the layer below that is like, is the feed actually good? Like, do they have different layers of the product types? You want to go in, you want to make sure that the client or the brand actually has a good categorization of their own products. Often they don't. So then you go in, you use, like, we use our feed management, that we like set that up and help optimize it for the client. But then also the other aspect of it is just, research, because like camping, again, easy example, like we know we can look up that the season is coming up and it's going to increase now. You can like do your own research. Like you have to do the research behind and for the brand, and look at also previous years, what products have gone up in spend, which product types, categories have gone up in spend this time, the previous past year, the 2 years before that, and stuff like that. And then also just feeling / you can sort of like make your own sort of judgment call on that often, I would say. Rarely brands have, if you are Zalando, like it's a huge job, but often brands are still like sort of within a niche, and within one area. So it's not that hard to like be able to identify it, I would say. Yeah.
You mentioned seasonality quite a lot, and it totally makes sense. It's very important, but I'm not sure if that is necessarily something that I see people factoring in a lot. How do you, outside of the things you've said there, and like some of it's fairly logical, do you literally take like keyword themes and put them in Trends Planner to like see if they're different? Like, do you back it up with like quite a lot of data? How do you think about that?
Honestly, when it comes to seasonality, partly just like previous years, like this category, or if they had like a similar, like if we manage a brand for 2 years, we also get the insights like ourselves. Like we know it, this happened last year, so we already know it. But that I would like seasonality, primarily talking to like brand owners, like know this very good. They know their brand, they know their industry, but then also looking at like the back end real data. Because if there's a seasonality, if there's a clear season coming up, you will be able to see it in like the previous spring months. You could clearly see that. So honestly, seasonality, of course, search pressure on different keywords, but primarily back-end data, I would say. But that's also something that like brands do way too little. Looking at like this, you want to have this group of products which are performing extremely well. So you want to have their own campaign, maybe, where you can make sure that they get a lot of more budget than the other, all of the other products. Often often they don't do it. Next step is just doing it based on the Google Ads performance data of the products. The next step, which brands like do even more rarely, are like looking if the products which are performing the best in your Google account are actually your best products. Often, no. Often it's not, because of different reasons, like Google decided that this group of 20% of products are just your best ones. They're distributing the most amount of budget on it. And then the algorithm sort of just gets stuck in this, momentum spending on these products. And you have one of your best sellers, which are just in the middle and are not getting any spend, but that that's one of your best sellers. And like through, custom labels, through categorization, you could like move that product up. But you need to have a system for it, because as I said, you can't really like manually, tag products all the time. You can do that to some level, of course, but on the full spectrum of like constants of products, not possible.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Got it. How much do you try and match what you're seeing externally from the client and the channels as top products in Google? Like, it totally makes sense that if the top product everywhere else is made in Google, then you need to fix that. But how much do you kind of allow the system to maybe find those things that aren't a success in other places but could be?
Yeah, I would say we want to try to steer it as good as possible. But then again, as you were saying, and I think I touched on it before, that like you can't have a campaign with 2 products. So for like, we can't take these 10 bestsellers and just put them in their own campaign with super high budget, because it would not work, because the algorithm would just like push and destroy these products, because they don't have you need to gradually steer more and more spend to the products which you want to steer more spend towards. And then gradually, as they get more spend, they will also get more data. And then if you continually also work with like the feed, you improve the product categorization, product types, the descriptions, and the titles in the actual feed, you'll get more and more spend, and then it will get more data, and it will, make its way up there. But yeah, there's a fine line of like finding how much you can segment and how much you can steer.
Yeah.
While still keeping results good. Because one of the things that like I could easily just go up and theoretically set up an awesome setup now, but you need it to, like, in the meantime, deliver good results. And a lot of times, some of the best sellers, some of the best products that you want to distribute a lot of budget to, maybe they have no data. And then like you need the data in the feed too, to make sure that the products actually perform well. So yeah, there's a fine line of just setting everything up and like knowing how to go into an account, utilize the campaigns that are already running, which products are, let's say a client or a brand has 3 campaigns at the moment. Which products are the 3 different campaigns currently spending on? And hence, based on our new like setup that we want to have, which setup or which niche should each of those 3 new campaigns have when we take over and we start making changes? And how should we steer, like how should we remake those campaigns and what should we remake them into based on what they're already like anyway spending on? And then what new layers do we need to add? So there's a fair bit of analysis that comes into that as well.
Yep. You mentioned of guiding spend or pushing spend toward those areas, and you talked a little bit about some of the optimization things there. But how else do you push spend? Like, is it bid strategy, budget changes? Like, what else are you doing to kind of guide you?
Yeah, we always try to think about the different campaigns in sort of like a priority order. Of course, on shopping you can just set the priority, but otherwise, if you have 2 campaigns on like with exactly the same amount of products and exactly the same amount of the same products, the same budget and everything, they are like the priority then are just set by the targets, and if they have the same targets, it's set by the budget. So if you can sort of steer the budget based on these things, and then within the campaign you can also steer the budget between the ad groups if you then use standard shopping. So yeah, that's really the way. And then in PMax you can sort of try your way forward when it comes to setting them up in different ad groups, trying different audience signals. One thing we've seen is that within a PMax, if you give it audience signals at the moment, it's shifting a bit. I would say a year ago, maybe it was different, but today, if you give you can steer more spend towards a PMax asset group if you give it more audience signals. So that's another way to do it. A more guaranteed way to do it is just different targets on different ad groups, which works.
Got it. Interesting. Yeah, that endpoint is pretty cool. Because I think when I first saw that, I was a bit skeptical of like, it just kind of giving you a lever that's not connected to anything just to make you feel like you're in control.
Yeah.
Just because everyone was kind of wanting more control with PMax, but it's interesting to sound like it does, notably, or you've noticed it does change slightly based on going.
Yeah, I would say it does, and then also like we've tried for some clients which don't have like properly working with marketing signals. Then I'm happy to say myself, like as an agency, you should say that, hey, this is not working because of this or this, and then like you should help the client set it up. But in this particular case, we said it, and they were like, we don't want to do it. But then we said like, okay, let's test a PMax with like non-working remarketing signals. And honestly, one of them, like then it was just like exactly the same as the standard shopping. Like we still used audio signals and it worked but still like when this client that did not have properly working remarketing audiences, the PMax was literally, not literally, 99% performing the same as the standard shopping campaign. So then my take is sort of like, okay, you need properly working audience, like interest, and you need to utilize that aspect, but also you need to utilize and have working remarketing signals that you can sort of drive that, that data into the PMax as well. So my take is that like often we try to utilize both campaign types, where maybe the standard shopping is more focused on cold terms and driving new traffic, while the PMax is better at like guaranteeing that you win the bid on the non-branded search from a person who previously maybe visited your site or similar to previous customers. And the PMax is just better at guaranteeing to make sure that you win the most important bids maybe. So they work together very well if you can like set it up in a good way.
Yeah, got it. So talked a lot about structure and some optimization stuff there. Is there anything else you do from an ongoing optimization point of view that you haven't already mentioned?
Like, I would say that there's a big aspect of that which is like never finished. So you can always go in, depending on how big like a product assortment is, but you can always go in and see new potential depending on maybe new seasonality, clients add new products. So you can always go, like, most often you can, this is like this whole thing that I'm talking about is under development always. Even though after like maybe a first 3-month period, you've gone from nothing to like a good base. But then you can always go in and you're like, oh, we're seeing like this product category is really scaling at the moment, or it's increasing in search demand. And then you can sort of flip that out and, rearrange. But that's always under development. But then also like search campaigns, we haven't talked at all about that, but I'm not sure if we want to do that. But then generally like the feed, like I do not think brands realize how, I don't want to say bad, but like underdeveloped maybe their feeds are. Like, yeah, we've actually taken over a brand that spends like $500K. This is one of our definitely biggest clients. We took them over like 3 weeks ago, and we're looking into their feed. And it's just like, in our feed management, it's just like red, like so much to do. Because they're like, brands do not realize how much they can do with the feed, I think. Way too few know that you like how much you can optimize your titles to begin with, but then also the ones that know that, they sort of stop at the title because it's one of the first things that you do. But then it's like, do you know how much more you can add in the feed? So that's something that we also try to do and continually improve as well.
How do you do that at scale? Because that feels like if you get a big feed and hours and hours of manually doing it, like, is AI involved in that?
No, but like feed management tools like Data Feedwatch, Channelbow, like Channelbow is my favorite, but the Data Feedwatch is also good. And then there's tons of more, and they all pretty much do the same. But yeah, AppScale, that definitely. So you set rules, like if the description is shorter than this, then add this, and then you optimize like that's way. Or like if the product type is this and the description is shorter than this, and you do that, and that definitely helps you do it at scale. But it still takes time. You don't want to just slam things in there. So you want to work your way through. But there's definitely like with feed management tools, it definitely is pretty easy to do it, I would say.
Yeah. But YouTube, let's go down there. I don't know. We will. But
I like, yeah, we can start so many places. I would say YouTube is one of the most, for like bigger D2C brands, it should be one of the most like increasing channels where D2C brands are spending their money, because a lot of like D2C brands are now grown and they're quite big, and a lot of them have a hard time like getting new eyeballs onto their brand, and often that is because like at a certain point, Meta just sort of stops doing that for them. It reaches a point where like incrementally getting new eyeballs on your brand sort of becomes easier by just like adding another channel. But cracking YouTube is like, it requires a different mindset because of the nature of the platform, Like people don't naturally in the same way scroll YouTube and press ads and buy. So like if you want to do YouTube at scale, first of all, you need a different way of approaching the creatives, because not the same type of like statics, images. So from Meta, you can't naturally take everything you're doing on Meta and just put it on TikTok or YouTube. I mean, so you need another like creative strategy, and to do it really at scale, you probably will need like more high production videos, and also you need a different mindset on the actual like KPIs, because if you want to spend a lot on YouTube and like drive sales with it, which it does, you can't be like, yeah, we need a 3 ROAS, because it will never happen. You need to have you need to have a proper attribution tool, where you can like cross-check, the different attribution models really, and clicks which we use depending on I don't want like Northbeam, honestly, is probably the best for YouTube. I'm just putting it up there. Just the way it measures the data, and then cross-check like that with like the full metrics. But like for a lot of brands, this is the hard thing to do, to be like, let's scale at 0.9 ROAS, why should we do that? Yeah, well, because it's actually writing safe, and if you have a good way of measuring it, you can track that. Like maybe Google as a channel as a whole is still like really performing, and like we scale YouTube, Google is still performing on the same level. How? When YouTube itself, it's really not performing. Probably because like YouTube is actually driving incremental sales, but it's just not picking it up itself because of the fact that like people don't just click on things and then buy. It has a longer route. So,
yeah, I totally agree. And I saw a few studies recently that talked about like the incrementality of YouTube and the fact that, it's very hard to, it's very easy to undervalue that activity. And North being great shot, I've heard that platform's pretty good as well. So I think the YouTube side, we could probably spend another hour talking about.
That's an episode of its own, I would say. Like,
yes, we knew that one. But I think it was a great sort of summary of kind of that platform and kind of the key sort of takeaways. I'm going to try and summarize. There's been a lot we've talked about, a lot of really useful stuff, but you talked obviously about the start of like getting that client context and understanding the business and why that's like a really important starting point. And then that feed into like, what are the variables that are really important to the business? And then that should dictate how you approach the account, how you structure the account. I think the seasonality piece is very interesting, like factoring that in, looking at historical data, talking to the clients, turning that into a plan or a structure, a revised structure, running with that, guiding budget, making sure top sellers match. And then, like you say, it's kind of a work in progress. You do like maybe 60-70% of that work in the beginning, and then the rest is kind of iteratively over time. All really great. And then the audience piece, the signals in PMax, and then the standard shopping PMax, the marketing recommendations there. So there's a lot. I'm hoping I covered all of it in that summary. Did I miss anything?
No, honestly, I was sitting here thinking like, yeah, you got it. We got everything down, I would say. That's pretty much it. And it feels so straightforward to me. And it's just like, there's so many, like when I'm in the space that I'm in on Twitter and like LinkedIn and based, and there's like what people are talking about, it's just like, what are we talking about? Like people are talking about like splitting brand and non-brand in different search campaigns. I'm like, what? How is this a discussion? Like brands, like there's so many brands that are just like wasting money by not doing anything. And they have no strategy around it. And then there's like, you could just fix so much simple things, one step up. And that's not even getting into what I think is the fun stuff to talk about. Like, how could we actually like set this up in a like advanced way? But yeah, you got it. That's pretty much it. But for most brands out there, just like take the first step of doing something.
Yeah. It's almost, there's just a lot of talk around AI and AI within the industry and like the sort of incremental impact we can have on the platform in that world. But to your point, and you've seen firsthand, I've seen firsthand how it's still very easy to set things up in a way that is not optimal, and there's still a load of headroom if you did it a different way.
Yeah.
So there's still tons of opportunity there to be better and build something that's better. So it's
it's gonna be a fun ride to see when we can be completely obsolete. But eventually, maybe it will happen. But at the moment, we still have a job, I would say.
Well, I'm hoping I can retire by the time we get to that. I'm hoping it'll be that far ahead. I'll be chilling some, but we'll see.
Let's hope on a beach somewhere, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. Well, this was great fun. Appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, Matt, it's amazing coming here, and maybe we'll do it again sometime.
Yeah, I'd love to. Thank you.
Cool. Amazing.